So I'm on page 159 of the Impressionist, and chapter's titled Sheila Wants Another Child. The previous week, Patrick reached the milestone of having just turned 7. He was now in the first grade and had distributed birthday party invitations among his classmates, which Sheila had designed on her desktop computer. And in turn, which she had then taken to a quick print shop, and the apron-clad fellow there ran the design on white 6x9-inch, 110-pound cardstock. After she'd picked up the job a few days later, she sat at the kitchen table and folded them all along the middle score line the printer had provided. Patrick then took the invitations to school and doled them out to his newfound pals, as well as several of the prettiest girls in the class, especially the ones who didn't give him any gas for the way he answered one of their teacher's questions now and again. Sheila and Bernie presided over a very active throng of 16 kids, 9 boys, including Patrick, and 7 girls. Several of them lived in the immediate neighborhood where the house they had decided to buy was located. Sheila had planned several co-ed games, which kept the children's excited attention more or less focused. Pin the tail on the donkey was just one of these de rigueur activities which she got underway and supervised. Not a single kid was inadvertently stuck with the pin-and-pawed tail. Another was piñata smashing, which Bernie had arranged in the backyard, having suspended the piñata itself, a confetti-covered papier-mâché horse stuffed with cellophane-wrapped candies, from one of the lower limbs of a maple tree while standing on a stepladder he had purchased from Home Depot. Soon after buying their house, Bernie was bemused early on by the various items he had to buy at the hardware store to take care of the lawn and to attend to minor maintenance around the house, these items which he purchased on an as-needed basis. The detached garage became a weekender's workshop as well as a storage space for all the stuff they could not bring themselves to discard, and also served as room for Sheila's expanded horticultural pursuits. For now that she and Bernie had become homeowners, she had developed an even greater interest in plants, to include the numerous kinds of bushes and flowering perennials native to the coastal Northwest. Not far from where they lived was a family-owned nursery, which she had visited on several occasions merely to give herself a good idea of what she might bring home to plant around the house. And she had several conversations there with a woman named Claire Lakeland, who, along with her husband, owned and operated the business. One night recently, they had just gotten into bed, and she said to Bernie, "I've been thinking about having another baby. Patrick needs to have a little brother or sister. I don't want him to grow up as an only child, Bernie, do you? But aren't you worried that the kid might have Down syndrome? For Christ's sake, Sheila, you'll turn 45 in a couple of months." "Of course I've thought about it, but plenty of women give birth to perfectly normal babies at my age, Bernie. And for your information, Mr. Youngers, children with Down syndrome may be faced with multiple setbacks, but they are perfectly delightful and generally happy as they grow up. Having Downs is hardly a death sentence. Sure, they need more care and involvement from their parents. One of my friends has a girl, and she was born that way. She's 14 now. She's 14 now, and if you weren't looking right at her, you'd never even know that she had it." After a pause while he tried to absorb all this, Bernie said, "Okay, if you really want another baby, I'll stand by you, and We'll just hope for the best. Yes, yes, we will. Thank you, Bernie. He smiled. Soon they were making love. Throughout the days during the week, Theo had the house to himself, reminding him of his long days of solitude begun after his wife had passed away. He and Sam got together more frequently back then, he reflected. But now he was surrounded by family again, Erica, Susie, Leland. Until that blowout of his at the Illinois bar, their lives at home together had been as good as the guy could have hoped for, he thought. He was in the garage, having just taken on a new project, a folding desk for either Susie or a writing table for the living room. Then he considered the number of drawers each of these desks would have, and soon he decided that the one for the living room would be without drawers, though it would have some cubby partitions to save various sorts of mail, as well as a small centrally located drawer a few inches above the desk's surface. Having now pictured the desk for the living room in his mind, Theo then decided that the fold-down desks he intended to provide for each of his grandkids would be identical, and each of them would have a set of 3 drawers. As for the surfaces of these 2 desks, their single small drawer in the center and the 2 cubby slots on each side would simply replicate the design of the writing table he intended for the living room. Just after 4, Leland materialized in the open doorway and peered in at him through the gloom of the garage's interior. Hey there, Grandpa. Well, Leland. School must have just gotten out. How come you and a bunch of other guys aren't playing softball? You know, work up. Shoot, Grandpa, I'm no good at baseball. My throw's okay, but I stink at the plate. Hell's bells, son. You and I can fix that. Why, after a few practice sessions with me, you'll be knocking out doubles and triples like nobody's business. You mean it? Do I mean it? Of course I mean it. The 2 of us can practice together anytime you like, Leland. Just as long as I'm not busy here working on something. But Grandpa, you're always out here doing stuff. Oh, well, I guess I am, aren't I? He said absently. You've got an excellent point there, son. An excellent point. Well, how about if we just set aside Saturday mornings for baseball practice? Cool! I hate watching TV with Susie then, any old way. Why is that, pal? Because she's such a big bossy pants, that's all. And she always likes to show off how smart she is. So she's always saying stuff, and it bugs me. Well, little buddy, guess what? I don't like bossy women either. What kind of ladies do you like, Grandpa? After a pause, he said, to begin with, son, good-looking ones. Then what? Oh, shit, I don't know, Leland. Someone with plenty of experience and some brains, for one thing. Kind of like your mother, only older. He was quick to add. The boy smiled and continued to watch his grandfather work as the old man returned to swiping a plane down the length of a 3/8 inch thick plank. Octavia moves into Jack's house. All of Octavia's clothes went into the small walk-in closet in the main bedroom, while Jack's far less voluminous wardrobe was summarily consigned to the smaller closet in the spare bedroom. As for the furniture situation, and as Octavia had initially observed when she saw Jack's house for the first time, he didn't have all that much apart from a floor lamp, a sofa, and a coffee table. Accordingly, the prior Spartan ambience of the house's interior was transformed by a distributed array of what furniture Octavia had acquired on her own. along with her paintings and photographs. Her sizable library was divided between the living room and the guest bedroom. The moving company had delivered and unloaded all of Octavia's possessions on a Saturday, and by Monday, when Jack had come home from work at Prison Pictures' production office, he saw that this rapid transformation of his home was now complete. "How do you like that?" "Oh, how do you like it?" Octavia asked him, as soon as he had stepped in through the door. He looked about for a moment to take in and comprehend the result of Octavia's talents in the way of set design. The place looks very distinctive now, Octavia, on top of being comfortable and inviting." "Yes, but do you like it?" "Well, sure, I like it. Looks a hell of a lot better than it used to." "I am glad you like it, then. As for the honest truth, Jack, your aesthetic sense was nowhere to be found in this house. Functional, yes, but apart from that, what you had going here left a lot to be desired." "Hell, it looks 10 times better now. You really gave it some class." Later that same evening, once their talk of the bungalow's new appearance had been exhausted, Jack brought up a matter which had circled around in his thoughts ever since the night she had called him to explain that Stephen had finally caught on to them. From what Octavia had told him, the son of a bitch must have gotten conclusive proof concerning the matter, since he had come at Octavia with even more smugness and aggression than usual. "You're not going to get a dime out of this divorce, are you?" he said in a low voice. "No, I will not obtain any money from him. And that is a certainty." She's German. Austrian. "After all, I signed a prenuptial agreement. No, I won't be getting a cent. Not a cent from that loathsome miser. Look, not to put too fine a point on it, you'll need to find a job. Of course I must begin looking for work. I'm well aware of this. In one way or another, I expect to put my talents to use and earn a living by doing so. You doubtless have been thinking that I have become a spoiled rich man's wife. But that is not true. I say it is not true, Jack." Okay, fucking hell, calm down, Octavia. You'll probably find a job far more easily than I could have ever dreamed of." Wordlessly, she smiled, and then she kissed him with a generosity and verve that aroused him in a matter of moments, and they soon drifted into the bedroom. Sheila's brief encounter with Retro Dave. After 2 full days of wrestling with the problem of recovering Laura Kingsbury's passcode number from her laptop, Sheila had eventually resigned herself to the necessity now of contacting Retro Dave, then going over to that hideous, ramshackle, cluttered, rented house of his, hand off the laptop to him so that he could hack into it directly using the brute force method of his decryption device, for which he soon began to boast he'd developed a much faster algorithm and had coded up by using a parallel programming routine that functioned even more efficiently than the original factory-installed software, saying all this while he waited for Sheila as she fished out from her purse an envelope which contained 3 $100 bills. "You know, Dave," she said as she handed him the envelope, "you really should do something about this place. How do you ever find anything around here amid all this jumbled chaos of shit? Although it might seem impossible to you, dear lady, I know precisely where everything is located." "You're right. I can't see how you could possibly know where anything is, let alone everything." He stroked his chest-length beard, grubby from the hamburger he'd eaten an hour ago upon its delivery by some driver from DoorDash, and said, "I've got a map in my mind which is directly correlated via a 1-to-1 correspondence to every single object you see around here. Like I say, I know exactly where everything is, including, most importantly, my wallet." And as he said this, He reached over to an opaque jar, unscrewed the lid, and fetched out his billfold. "I'll be here any time you need my assistance, Sheila, any time. Always a pleasure, if only an infrequent one, to see you." Clutching Laura Kingsbury's laptop under her arm, she thanked him and hurried out of the man's squalid, reeking home. Once outside in the fresh, rain-sodden Seattle air, she felt much better, despite having just parted from $300 that she would never see again. When Sheila returned to the house, she found Bernie was already home from work and had already gone to Fairhill Elementary School to pick up Patrick from his intramural after-school soccer practice, which usually ended shortly after 4 o'clock each day. Of course, Sheila nearly always brought their son home from school, but Bernie had insisted he could get off work early. Ms. Schultzman allowed him a flexible schedule, one which accommodated those afternoon occasions when he was obliged to conduct some business negotiation with one of their newer clients, most of whom were quite accustomed to laying down the general outline of a business contract over a few drinks. Only later would they have their attorneys drop the legal contract for services to be rendered by Schultzman Public Relations based on that afternoon discussion at one cocktail lounge or another. "Retrograde pulled through for me again," she said. But now I'm not going to get one crappy cent out of this job. Another explosive Sunday interlude. I didn't even remember what this was about. On Sunday, Erica's parents, Frank and Lorraine Connolly, were going to drop by for dinner shortly before 3 o'clock. On this occasion, Theo was bracing himself for their arrival with a juice glass half filled with Canadian whiskey. As he waited for the moment when the Connollys showed up, he read several pages from his Stuart Kaminsky crime thriller. He smiled when he recalled the time Jack had told him that he had low to middle-brow taste in literature. To this, Theo's reply was, "What would you have me read instead, Jack? Hemingway? Steinbeck?" "Yeah, for starters, you could try some John Updike or Joseph Heller or even Philip Roth. Those guys are much more recent, but they're all dead now. Hell, why don't you read some Cormac McCarthy? I've got news for you, son. I've read a couple of books already. But he threw in a lot of Spanish into that one book of his I read. But I liked No Country for Old Men. That was a good one." Conversation that must have taken place almost 15 years ago, he thought. When the door chime rang, Theo rose from his easy chair and welcomed Erica's parents into the house. As Frank and Theo shook hands, Frank said, "Man alive, it smells awful good in here." Erica's been working in the kitchen for the last couple of hours. She even had me run to the store for a few things. Lorraine said, "Excuse me, gentlemen, but I believe I'll go into the kitchen to visit with Erica for a while. I haven't seen my daughter in a coon's age." She slipped out of her coat, with Frank's assistance, who in turn handed her coat to Theo, who then hung it in the front room closet along with Frank's overcoat. When he turned back to Frank, the two men shared a knowing glance. Later, as the four adults lingered over the remains of Erica's delicious Sunday fare, after the children had been excused from the table, Theo brought up a political matter as he said to Frank, "Earlier today I watched William Barr being interviewed by Ari Melber on MSNBC. Barr's just had his book published about his time in the White House with Donald Trump." As he said this, Theo happened to glance for a moment at Lorraine, who he knew full well believed that the Democrats would drag America into a nightmare of socialism. Both Lorraine and Frank were ardent Republicans of long standing. He briefly met her disapproving look and returned his gaze to Frank. Well, anyway, he continued, Barr said that when he went into the Oval Office to give Trump his resignation, Trump blew his stack when Barr maintained that there just simply wasn't any evidence of widespread voter fraud, and had advised Trump that he should quit talking about up this line of bull in his public statements. Well, Barr then said that Trump became infuriated, cursed him out, generally acting like he'd lost his mind. Then the guy from MSNBC asked him a hypothetical. If Trump turns out to be the Republican nominee for president in 2024, would he, Barr, support and vote for the guy? And Barr said that he would. So next question, why? And Barr said he thought the Democratic agenda was totally wrong for the country and he couldn't possibly vote for a Democrat as president. How do you like that, Frank? Barr would still support a criminal psycho for a president. It boggles the mind. It's hardly any secret that Barr's in the conservative camp, Frank said. People don't usually switch parties, especially not the politicians themselves. Frank, you know this country, in this country, we only have a quasi-democratic system when it comes to voting for the president. Yes, I know. The Electoral College has gotten a bad rap. Yeah, well, it's so fucked up, we've got minority rule every time a goddamn Republican wins the White House. Frank, I think it's time to leave. I'm really not interested in listening to Theo rant on about politics, Lorraine said, then glanced from her husband to Theo once more and gave him her most ferocious look of withering disdain. Really, Theo, I assumed you at least had enough manners to refrain from talking about politics, especially at the dinner table. Lorraine, this is my house, and I'll say what I bloody well please in it. Oh, Frank, I don't know about you, but I'm leaving. I've had enough. You can have Erica give you a ride home. She then rose from her chair and hurried to the closet and yanked out her coat and disappeared out the door. That's good enough.